This is You the People. Each week, us three Canadians talk about you, the people, your politics, your political system, and yes, your upcoming election. Americans, Yanks, whatever you call yourselves, we're watching, we're listening, and we have some thoughts. But first, the headlines. All right, guys, our first headline for this evening. Polls are looking great, says Eric Trump, predicting more enthusiasm for his father than Election Day of 2016. Let's get your take on, of course, this prognostication that will certainly not be coming true. Corey.
Well, maybe it'll come true. I mean, polls are clearly not looking great, but it's not as though they were looking great at this time for Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton in 2016. So, hey, look, I mean, unfortunately, bad things happen. So who knows?
It's the only way that they can push the base. They have to have the polls are wrong narrative. Otherwise, they're even going to see a more substantial step down when people don't actually show up to vote. So they have to have the base go out. Therefore, they must tell the base that the polls are wrong. That's the only way that they're ever going to make the polls wrong. They have to hope that the Democratic voters say, oh, I don't need to get out, especially with this COVID thing. I'm not going to go vote. And Republicans come out en masse, and then they'll be able to point to the polls being wrong again, even though they really weren't. But that's a different topic for a different day.
The second headline, a fan favorite of mine, of course, in the midst of this election, less than 100 days away, Republicans are clearly eyed in on the prize. Republicans have slammed Teen Vogue for being Marxist propaganda. Fantastic. After Teen Vogue published an op-ed talking about the abolishment of private property. Stephen, I mean, going after Teen Vogue is a necessary construct of elections all across the world. And now, of course, the United States is catching up. I'm so glad they finally caught up to the secret success of all other Western democracies, which is taking a shit kicking out of Teen Vogue.
You know, I'm surprised you haven't noticed that this is the secret sauce, Zain. The secret sauce to the Republican strategy is don't talk about issues. There's no point. There's no winning with issues. Make up your own issues, and you win on those issues that you've made up. So we're going to make up a wall. We can win on a wall. We're going to make up on Teen Vogue being communist propaganda. We can make that up and away we go, because those are the only issues you can win on, because real issues like COVID and real issues like job loss, you're not winning on. So you better make up some quick issues quickly.
Corey, any thoughts on Teen Vogue being Marxist propaganda? It's Marxist, Stephen, not communist. Please get it correct.
My bad. Yeah, my bad.
Well, Karl Marx was a well-known proponent of the fashion industry, so clearly this is perfect alignment. No, listen, actually, to be fair, Teen Vogue has posted some pretty
Marxist,
Marxist. Well, seriously, like they've been taking this whole down with property angle for years at this point. So there's been praise of Karl Marx. There's been talking about how communism is not that bad. It's actually one of these weirder things going on right now that Teen Vogue has gone like full revolutionary, like Teen fucking Vogue. Like this is a fashion and entertainment magazine. And it's just, I think, is an indication of where Gen Z's politics are. And they are coming for you, Donald. They are coming for you, and they know which lip gloss to use.
And it also tells you where politics kind of ranks in the zeitgeist of things to talk about and what's hot in the priority in our current zeitgeist. Which brings me to my favorite headline of the week. The New York Times says, White House reached out to South Dakota governor about adding Trump to Mount Rushmore.
Oh, my God.
This is one of my favorite fucking headlines I have ever read. I had to do a double take on the headline before I opened the article. And yes, it was indeed true. Corey, what do you think?
There's a lot of room on that mount. I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I mean,
There's a lot of room.
That's balls, man. That is cojones. That is genitalia of any type. I'm not trying to be gendered here. That is wild that he would just go and say, look, you know what? That monument, you know, this very old, very storied thing. It's so Trump, right? Like, and you can just imagine that his face would be bigger and shinier and have lasers in its eyes or something. Here's the thing. You don't get to put your face, well, you just don't get to put face on Mount Rushmore, but you sure as hell don't get to do it while you're still alive. You sure as hell don't get to do it while you're still president. That's like what Saddam Hussein would do with monuments in Iraq. That is not what an elected president would do in the United States of America. That's bonkers. But Great reading. Even better than Teen Vogue.
Carter, what are your thoughts on Donald Trump trying to get his face plastered onto what many people do not know is a massive mountain, and Mount Rushmore occupies a very small amount of it. So Corey is right that there is a lot of real estate available. But Stephen, any thoughts?
Well, I'm told, I read that Kristi Noem, the governor of the state of South Dakota, actually delivered a mocked up version with Donald Trump's face on it. Like, this is the stage that we are at. This Republican governor has decided to suck up to the Republican president by pretending that he is one of the 5 greatest presidents in American history. It's lunacy. And I think, the people who are afraid of maniacal leadership should be the Republicans, and they're just eating it up. It's fantastic. This is one of the great stories of the week. Thank you for bringing it up and making me want to hurt myself.
You have only Donald Trump and his administration to thank, Stephen. They are yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just really liked your meta thing there, too. It's like many people didn't know it's a big mountain. That's a very Donald Trump way to
Let me tell you something.
Them.
Well, I mean, listen. Many people did not know it, myself included. I was just very... Let's move it on to our first segment. You can't make this stuff up. Oh, wait, you totally fucking can. I want to talk about digital campaigning. I want to talk about campaign tactics, and I want to start with a couple of things that we are seeing in this American race that I don't think we've seen here in Canada, and I think is quite perhaps alarming, if not interesting, to one end of the spectrum. And it's the fact that most recently Donald Trump had a campaign ad where he doctored images of Joe Biden. It started with a line that said, "Deep in the heart of Delaware, Joe Biden sits in his basement, alone, hiding, and diminished." And then there's a photo of Joe Biden appearing sitting on the floor alone, almost like in a stance, crouched on the ground, standing, and sitting far left into a image. It was one of the weirdest things, clearly doctored. Corey, I want to get your take. Would we have seen this in Canada, and kind of what do you make of something like this?
Well, I'm sure it's been done by somebody in this country, and I'm sure it was immediately shit upon, as it rightly should be. I mean, it's so crazy, right? Like, he was crouched on the ground because of all of the people around him taking all of the seats, right? Yeah. And the fact that they photoshopped him in that one, I believe there was another one where he was praying, where it was made to look like he was just head down, looking sad. And there's a third one, but I can't recall what it was now. But like the common theme being, let's just get Joe Biden out of context and make him look like a diminished individual. And that's just something that I think would violate any kind of truth in advertising standard anywhere. Now, in Canada, just like the United States, political parties are largely exempt from that. People tend to be hands off and say, just figure it out. We're not going to get in the business of determining whether something is true or not. But it's a real strong reminder how much this is based on people acting within a certain boundary of norms, right? Like, you just don't do this. You just don't, like, we've all gotten used to the taking the bad photo and using the bad photo. And maybe we should have seen that as the thin edge of the wedge here, right? Where it's a sneer at the wrong moment or something. But this is next level to actually then go in and fundamentally doctor the photo. So what's the next step? We've now taken people out from around him, changed the context. Are we going to change his facial expression in the next round of ads? Are we going to have his eyes glow red with Satan's fire or something in the ad after that? This is a continuation on a spectrum, but it's not something that should make anybody particularly comfortable. And the fact that this is now something that people are like this is not a big story. People don't really care. That's in its own right pretty surprising to me.
Carter, what do you think?
Well, I think that I'm. We don't have a truth in advertising standards for politicians because we have two groups that kind of hold people responsible. Now, number one is the opposition, the people that are they're campaigning against, and I think that Biden's team did a pretty good job of pounding back on this and pointing out the lunacy that this represented and the slippery slope that people could go down. The media, however, the objective referees, they walked right into this. I mean, they both sides they're both siding themselves to death, right? Anytime they get an opportunity, they say, well, Trump says, and then, Joe Biden says. It doesn't matter if what Trump says is true or honest or right. They just report it because he said it. And it doesn't matter whether you're watching a Fox News network or you're watching a CNN. We're not getting facts. We're getting instead a compilation of information, two sides, as though the two sides are equal. And the Republicans have noticed this, and other parties noticed this around the world, where they're able to take advantage of this. And it was in 1993 in Canada where we had an ad that was run that was unflattering to a person running for prime minister, Jean Chrétien. And that unflattering ad, by making up and taking advantage of his speech impediments as a result of a stroke, was seen to be so negative and so offside by people that they moved their votes. They stopped voting for the party that used that advertisement. This is the normal reaction in our world. Our world is, if you do something heinous, like make something up about your opponent, it has a natural consequence. And I think that that's what we're not seeing in the United States. We're not seeing the natural consequence of having something that is heinous done, and it incents more heinous activity. Let us not forget that we now live in the world where fake video is real video, right? We can make anybody say anything with the right face, and it can be dubbed over. We're going to see ads by the end of this cycle of Joe Biden saying things that he's never said.
You actually think they're going to go that far, Carter?
I don't think it'll be the Republican Party. I think that the people will run them. I bet you we'll see them on Facebook. I'll bet you that little platform won't do nearly enough to take down those types of ads.
Corey, I want to go to you, but perhaps inserting something what Carter just said right here, which is the earned media aspect of this ad. Do you feel like in some Machiavellian way they'd done this on purpose, so explicitly doctoring photos that it would get the earned media coverage that they perhaps desired from something like this?
Well, that would also be a bit of a sad testament, because they would be saying, hey, the conversation about whether he is alone and diminished is a bigger deal than the fact that we've fabricated these pictures, right? That to me is a bit of a crazy notion. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But to Carter's point, we have already begun to see doctored video become a component of U.S. elections.
Yep.
You'll remember
Clinton.
the Pelosi ads.
Pelosi.
Well, I was thinking of the Pelosi ads of her slowed down so it looked like she was slurring her speech. And that is not so far removed from the next step, which is just changing the words that she's saying altogether. Cutting out of context, taking the unflattering photo. Those things, by the way, are quite commonplace in this country now. And Carter talked about this 93 ad, which was against Chrétien, who had Bell's palsy, so he didn't speak out of half of his face here. And that attack ad looks incredibly tame, even by Canadian standards now. And so I guess one of the reasons why everybody's fixated on the United States, because it's the show, right? It's the most money. It's where these ideas come. It's a big, exciting, wild place. We all love America. But you guys you're like the canary in the coal mine. When we see something happening in politics in the United States, you can bet your ass it starts happening across democracies across the world. So it tends to be deeply unscrupulous areas like, far-right parties in Poland who take it on first and say, yeah, I'll do that. But it always makes its way across the border here. And we are going to start seeing more of this. So we've got to think, as North Americans, how do we defend against this? How do we make sure that we're not being just bamboozled by political parties that have made themselves exempt from all of these advertising rules that would otherwise, subject you if you were selling sugar water? You are selling your right to lead the free world, and you have fewer restrictions against you than people selling sugar water. Certainly fewer than cigarettes. It's crazy to me.
Corey, before I move on, Carter had a diagnosis as to why he thinks this has taken such an extreme form in the United States. He talked about the media's two-sidesism. He also talked about the fact that we have, this encroachment that we're continually starting to see in terms of what the public is accepting and what they're paying attention to. Do you feel like that's the appropriate diagnosis from your communications experience as to what might be going on?
Well, I think that the bigger reason is this long-term trend towards party affiliation meaning so much more, right? And this manifests in the weakening of the individual member's authority. It becomes much more whipped votes, and if you don't toe the line, then you're going to get primaried, and you're going to lose your job, right? And so you don't have the opportunity to go out and be a moderate on something or reach across the aisle. And instead of actually debating policy now, it's all my opinion, and I don't want to get too high-minded or too aggressive here, but it's become deeply performative. It's how can I prove that I am a member of this team? And how can I prove that I am opposed to this other team? And nothing else seems to matter anymore. Like, we've thrown all of these norms out the door. And this is a creeping challenge. We've seen it going on for a long time. And maybe Donald Trump just said, looks like the rules don't exist anymore, so I'm going to push this a little bit further than people thought they were allowed to go. It's like walking out on ice thinking you're going to fall through it. And Trump said, fuck this. I'm just going to run to the center, and nobody else is falling through it. Let's just see what the hell happens. And it doesn't matter how many things he does wrong. Doesn't matter how many policy planks of the Republican Party he disavows. The fact that it's his team and he runs the team and the team has to be with him seems to matter most of all. And none of the rest of this stuff will fix itself until we can get ourselves out of that mindset.
Stephen, Corey mentioned something very interesting, which was that if something starts in the United States, you can sure bet it gets ported over, both from a perhaps even a policy level, but certainly from a campaign political tactic level. And, we've seen in Canada from the Obama campaign, we've seen the, import of micro-targeting, the future of digital advertising. One thing I'm finding fascinating is what's happening in the States right now with Trump and how he's mobilizing people. And one area to double click on a bit more is Trump's email list. And Corey, I know you've been joined that Trump email list to get some of those emails, but this kind of fits into that same domain of like truth telling, right? Which is that a lot of the emails you're getting are not just hyperbolic. They always have been. They're not just conversational, as the Obama and the Romney and the McCain emails were casually conversational. They're now taking on a very different tone of saying, whoa, this is just outright lies. Carter, do you have any initial thoughts as to what you're kind of seeing from this dynamic in the U.S. political landscape from the tactics level?
Well, it's interesting because when you're targeting someone and you send an email to them that says, and I'm paraphrasing, and Corey, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but you're one of the 30 people that President Trump has decided to make this email to. There is no way that email is only going to 30 people, but you are being told a straight up bald-faced lie. And the bald-faced lie it wouldn't be allowed in a marketing campaign that is trying to sell you a television. It wouldn't be allowed, right? We're only going to make this offer to you because of who you are. But that falsehood is uttered by the president of the United States or his, and whether it's him, of course, he's not writing these emails, but it looks like it's the president. It looks like it's the son. There's an opportunity to win a dinner with Donald Trump or a lunch with Donald Trump, except it's never going to be honored. These things that we used to have to do.
Because of COVID travel restrictions in this particular case. Right.
Yeah. I mean, well, in one particular case, right? Like, the 30 people that just got that email were 30 million people, right? Like, this is not the falsehood in the fundraising emails, especially, is designed to capture and take the most amount of money out of people because they feel like they have a closeness to Donald Trump. The personification, like the leader is now seen to be the dear leader who lives next door, even though it's Donald Trump. It's confusing to me.
Yeah, and Corey, we've seen this style of humanizing emails, a quick one-liner from Barack Obama, your pal Michelle Obama dropping you a quick 2 lines. This is on a whole new level, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Let me give you an example. By the way, I get like 10 a day. So I signed up for this email list, had no idea what I was subjecting myself to. But now it's kind of like rubbernecking at a car crash. Like, I just can't stop. I know I shouldn't look. I know I should hit the accelerator and move on. But so here's one I got today. Or I guess it was yesterday. Congratulations. Corey is the Trump Patriot of the Week. Corey, after looking through all our best supporters, President Trump chose you as the very first Trump Patriot of the Week. Your support has not gone unnoticed, Corey. You've truly earned this prestigious recognition. President Trump was so impressed by your dedication to our movement that he unlocked an exclusive 500% match just for you. Your Patriot of the Week 500% match offer is only available for you for the next hour, so act fast. Please contribute any amount in the next hour to claim your Trump Patriot of the Week 500% match. So, what can we say about that besides it's absolutely crazy? Talk about high-pressure sales tactics. They put a clock on me. They've suggested that the President of the United States picked me specifically, of all of the people. Donald Trump sat in the Oval Office and said, Corey Hogan, Canadian. Let's give him a Patriot of the Week. A Patriot of the Week. For a country I'm not even in here.
By the way, he is not opposed to having external influences outside of America helping him. Just to let you know.
But honestly, you cannot sell a furnace with these tactics. What they've done is they've said, we're just going for it. We're going to do it all. And I feel so sorry for the people who actually believe this. Like, imagine somebody who's not particularly tech savvy, maybe is not even particularly savvy writ large, saying, my God, the President of the United States has picked me to be his Patriot of the Week. Well, I better make a contribution.
These are scam email tactics. That's what it is. Email. It's a scam email.
This is the Nigerian president.
Yeah, Donald Trump is the Nigerian prince. That is the craziest element of these emails. And it strikes me that this seems to be the only way that they can raise money. I mean, they're back in front. They're back raising more money than Joe Biden this last month. But they're doing it at a cost of 10 emails a day that are completely factually inaccurate and are borderline scam. That's
they're crazy.
What it takes.
Let me just tell you, and you get one from the campaign first, and then you'll get one from the president next, and then you'll get one from Eric Trump at 3 a.m. saying, "Hey, why didn't you answer my dad's email?" Honestly, it's crazy.
Carter, you have long been a proponent of, I can easily summarize it as don't hate the player, hate the game, right? And if this is now the game, if this is now perhaps the new definition of where the game is at, do you have a moral or ethical sort of stand where you're like, we can't go down this path? If you're Biden still playing with the fundraising deficit, would you as a campaign strategist advise him to go down this path per se and say, let's try it? I think there's something different about the Trump supporter base, to be honest, here. But I think the tactic is also something perhaps to be exploited by the left if we're going down to this lowest common denominator form of political discourse.
Well, the left's really put themselves in a real pickle because they've said, we're going to walk away from these corporate donations. We're not going to want everybody to have their own super PAC. So if you're going to walk away from corporate donations, if you're going to walk away from those big dollars, and you're going to rely on small donor amounts with multiple donors, then you've got to crank it. And this way of cranking it is effective. Now, could you use the exact same tactics? Of course not. You can't. In an email campaign, the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is night and day, as it is within conservatives and liberals around the world. You can't use the same exact tactics, but you can use some tactics. And I think that the Biden team will be unveiling some of them because they have to keep up with money. Money is political currency. Money is how you win and how you measure, the overall success of a campaign before the ballots are cast. And right now, one of the big successes was the money that was flowing into the Biden campaign. They cannot lose that in August, September, and October.
Money is a political currency. It's also currency. Corey, same question to you, right? Fellow strategist here. If would you be advocating for something like this if you're on the other side of the ledger?
Oh God, no! I think that there is like a morality that needs to kick in here. I think what we're learning is the honor system doesn't work. Right? There's got to be laws against this. There's got to be rules against this. We've got to stop making political parties special and exempting them from the same basic requirements we have of every other corporation. If we are going to say political parties are not subject to limits on speech because, First Amendment rights, then let's just treat them like other organizations and say, okay, well, then you've got to follow the rules other organizations do too. This is the political equivalent of shouting fire in a crowded theater. It is wrong. It is when you've gone too far with free speech, and this needs to be reined in. They need to be accountable for this. I think anybody who's donated based on emails like the one I just read here absolutely should have cause, to sue for fraud, a campaign like this. This is just outrageous what they are trying to get away with at this point. And listen, I get 10 a day, and I'd say maybe 3 a day are what I would call normal fundraising campaigns. There's ones that are asking me if I want a Trump Platinum card that looks an awful lot like a credit card if I just sign up. There are ones that say, you've been chosen to get one of these 30 free hats, make a donation to get a free hat. Like that's first of all, there's not 30, I think, to Carter's point, and it's not a free hat. It's a $30 hat, like crying out loud. And so on and so forth. Like, this is just high pressure tactics designed to trick people, and that's wrong.
So, Corey, I'm going back to you, which is question on two folds. Number one, do you feel like something like this would happen in Canada? Number two, do you feel like something like this, if the answer to that is no, will happen in Canada?
I think that something like this will happen in Canada if it's not seen as... So one of the things that I think we don't do a great job of in Canada, and I don't think a lot of other countries do either, is saying, okay, we tend to say, oh, we're different from America. We're better than America, even. We sometimes think we won't fall for these same tricks. We won't go down these same roads. We always do. We always do. It's like how the joke used to be, what was... rock music from the 80s was rock music in the 90s in Canada, right? Like, we get there. We follow America on these things. And when we see things like this, we need to say, how do we stop this in advance? How do we make sure this couldn't happen here? Not that it won't happen here. How could it not happen here? How do we create rules to avoid this? Nobody talked about PACs in Canada until 10 years after everybody was talking about PACs in America.
Yeah.
Now PACs are just profligate. They're everywhere. And we've got to look at this, and we've got to say, let's stop it. Now, if you're America, I think you've got to be asking yourselves, how in the world do we put the genie back in the bottle? Because this is too far. And so, no, I would not, I don't think that my conscience would allow me to support a candidate who was putting ads like this out. So, I don't think Biden should follow him down that road. But I guarantee you it works. I mean, we're already seeing Trump's fundraising numbers are up, right? This works. Yeah. And Trump's digital campaign is very sophisticated.
Carter, what do you think? Will this become another great American export?
Yeah, absolutely it will. I mean, we've already seen pieces of it come up. I mean, there's now regulation. The difference between Canada and the United States is that we have institutions to protect us from this. We're not just reliant upon the media. But the question is whether or not the institution will be strong enough and whether or not it will be armed to protect itself. So you must arm the institutions to protect itself against this type of activity. The states is diffused. They arm themselves at the state level. 50 different states with 50 different sets of elections rules. We arm ourselves at the federal level. And that makes it a much stronger institution. We must arm ourselves to protect these types of tactics from being used, and states in the United States must arm themselves. The question only is, will you arm yourself after the tactics have been used, or will you arm yourself before? When people were using bad polling structures and push polls, we armed ourselves afterwards. We armed ourselves after the polls had caused a ton of damage through our electoral system. Now we have to arm ourselves before, because we do have deep fake videos. We do have, the ability to edit any photograph. These things are now in the hands of literally anyone. So they need to be protected against if we're going to protect our institution.
Corey, finish us off.
How would you rate President's recent job performance? Great, good, okay, or other? Thank you, Team Trump 2020.
Let's leave it there and move it on to our next segment. You can't hide in your basement all day. Guys, I want to talk about, as a leadoff to both.
Go outside and get some air.
Yeah, get some air. Get some air, Joe. I want to talk about Joe Biden's digital deficit, right? We talked about the campaign tactics that we had some moral questionability around, but I want to talk about the digital deficit that Joe Biden faces right now. There was a deep dive on how Joe Biden wants to win back the internet, and there was some alarming stats in there. Trump has made massive investments in digital for years. He's got 11 times times as many Twitter followers, 8 times as many interactions on Facebook, has outspent Biden 3-1 on Facebook in the past 30 days. And it's clear that Biden is trying to not paper over his digital deficit with his own infrastructure, but is leaning into the brands and personalities of others, right? He's trying to revolve a strategy around the popularity of celebrities or other folks who've got digital capacity online and broadcast his message. So I want to broadly talk about what you kind of make of the Biden digital deficit right now, how problematic you think it's going to be despite his advantage in the polls, and perhaps what a scenario where a bit of an uptick in polls for Trump, what that means for Biden when he doesn't have the digital ground to build on. So Carter, maybe I'll go to you first on this.
I think that the Biden campaign seems to think that this is a targeting exercise, that, they're targeting a different audience, therefore they should use a different medium. So they choose television because the audience that they're targeting is on television. What they don't seem to realize is that this isn't actually a targeting exercise at all. This is an engagement exercise. And television is quite literally a broadcast medium that is broadcast. It is large. It's the antithesis of those emails, the fraudulent emails that Corey's getting, which are personal, right? Digital advertising is personal. It tells you who in your friend group has signed up for Trump for America. It tells you so much more about the people being targeted. This is a personal interaction. And for the Biden campaign to give up that personal interaction is a fundamental misunderstanding of the difference between television and digital. You have to move to digital because people aren't willing to listen to broadcast anymore, if evidenced only by the fundraising initiatives. Broadcast, imagine putting up a fundraising appeal. Give to the Trump campaign. It's a 30-second brilliant ad with Donald Trump standing in front of the camera saying, "I need your money." Wouldn't have nearly the impact of a quick email that's sent out in Trump's name. And that's because the personification of the person making it small about the person is what makes digital work. And if the Biden campaign doesn't come to its senses and understand that it's not a question of targeting, it's a question of impact, then we're really going to see Biden struggle as we approach the final days of the campaign.
Corey, it's also partially what we discussed in the previous segment, right? Trump seems to be playing with his own set of rules, right? Having perhaps more looser moral boundaries on what he's able to say. His app has been gamified to the point where false information and a false sense of inside track has been developed for many supporters on that app, and they feel like they're going to be able to do certain things and have certain levels of access, which, has been proven to be not necessarily the case. But that all being said, what do you make of the Biden digital deficit as it stands right now? He's got the lead in the polls, but this seems a bit alarming.
Well, I will concede they have numbers and they have data. And I'll tell you, as a communications professional, these things are difficult to see from the outside because you just don't have the information they have on the inside. But with that rather large caveat put there, this just does not make sense to me. When I think about the demographics that the Democrats are strong with, when I think about those swing demographics, and when I think about media consumption habits more generally, this doesn't track. This doesn't align. I don't understand how in 2020, the Biden campaign is only spending, about 20% of their campaign dollars on quote unquote digital advertising. To give you some context, I ran communications for the province of Alberta in Canada. And 45% was spent on digital. 45% over a year. That's not like one campaign. That's not an outlier. That's, okay, we spent $70 million this year. 45% of that was spent on digital, either the production or the placement of digital advertising. And so when I hear 20% in the United States, with the demographics the Democrats are going after, or at least what I assume they're going after, so this goes into I can't see behind that curtain, I don't get it. Unless Joe Biden's plan is I'm going to get every vote over 65, which seems like a pretty nuts approach for a Democrat, this mix just feels wrong to me. And Trump has really leaned into the digital in a way. Again, like he's not playing Marquess of Queensberry rules here. There are no rules. He's doing whatever the hell he wants on it. And it's not just what you're seeing as far as the paid Facebook ads. It's the content that Trump and Trump adjacent people are creating that then goes viral. Joe Biden on digital was always going to be fighting with one hand tied behind his back. And I'll tell you why. We call it viral media, but I don't think we think about that metaphor as much as we should. Viruses mutate, they propagate. And what we see with viral media and these memes, these anti-Hillary memes, these things like Pizzagate, is there's a version of it. And then somebody creates some other batshit angle on it, and they mutate that meme. And that one's more outrageous, and it gets more likes and more shares. And then the next person changes it a bit. And the system is basically designed so that it will propagate the thing that is the most outrageous, most salacious, will go forward. No adherence to the truth. If you are just pushing the truth, the truth will only be as popular as the truth will be. But if you're not moored by what is actually true, if you're willing to say whatever the hell you want, if you're allowing that virality to go unchecked, Donald Trump is going to run away with certain demographics. And so, in my opinion, Biden probably needs to spend more than Trump, because he's got to be paying for the medicine. He's got to be letting loose those antibodies. And I just cannot understand how he's spending so little on digital and how he intends to win this election with those demographics. Now, he may, because he's so far ahead, but this seems crazy dangerous to me.
Carter, what do you think of Corey's diagnosis here?
I think it's totally right. I mean, I remember going to political conferences in the States years ago, and there was over a decade ago. And then we were talking about, should you be cutting your television buy to move it to digital? And one of the things that did migrate from Canada down to the United States was a reliance on digital. And the reason was we have less money to spend, right? Like in political markets where we don't have as much money to spend, we've been working in digital for a very long time, because if you can't afford TV, you buy digital. But soon it became very apparent that digital was just more effective. It allowed us to target messages. It allowed us to find the audience better. It allowed us to give the audience what they wanted. And television, can do that. Barack Obama had a very sophisticated buying mechanism to buy television in almost a digital fashion. What I'm seeing from the Biden campaign does not instill me with confidence that they're doing the same thing. And they may win. They may win in spite of this. What I worry about is that each election is the incubation period for the next election. And when you lose, you're supposed to come back stronger. The Democrats lost. They have come back weaker. Yeah. And that is just very, very confusing.
Corey, let's talk about this pendulum swing, because it's fascinating, right? The Democrats had the advantage in 04-08 with the Obama campaign, pioneered a lot of tactics, refined them from the Howard Dean campaign. How have they, in a little bit more than a decade, kind of lost some of that edge? Do you feel like part of it is conservatism's message has a lot more breathing room, and perhaps the message is allowing the medium to catch up and provide them the edge? Where do you kind of diagnose the edge that they've lost in the last little bit?
Well, that is funny. And you highlight something that I think is pretty important, which is we do tend to say, oh my God, the Republicans are so great at X. And then the next cycle when the Democrats win, oh, the Democrats are so great at X. This is why they've won. But a lot of it is because of what Stephen said. It's like you win with a certain technology, and you're fighting the last war. You then use that technology, if you're the Democrats, a cycle beyond when you should. Meanwhile, if you've lost and you're the Republicans, you come back, you refine, you try new things. And the way the whole primary system works is somebody who takes those risks, it's like evolutionary science. They're going to have a better chance of success than the others. And those crazy ideas that you put together on a hope and a prayer on the primary campaign turn out to help you win the primary, which allows you to help win the general, because you're doing new things all of a sudden. And so to see the Republicans, the Trump campaign, seem to be the ones who are pushing the envelope on digital, while the Democrats are retreating to like 2008, 2012 tactics, is really, really troubling. And it does make you worry about the foundation that is being constructed there. Now, we're talking about the Biden campaign, but there are other campaigns. And so hopefully that the Democrats, when you look at them as a whole, well, if you're a Democrat, hopefully, if you're a Republican, hopefully not, but you'd think that if you look at it all, you might say, okay, maybe this will net out in the wash. We've got our local campaigns. They're going to be more digital. Maybe Biden will give us that air cover we need. I don't know, because I suspect that you may find that as you move down ticket, the Republicans become more analog and the Democrats become more digital. But that might just be my biases in place. I'm not sure.
Carter, what do you think? Do you feel like conservatives across the board, almost agnostic of where they are in the world, have an edge on digital right now because of what their message is, perhaps, and how they've been able to kind of memify and, to Corey's point, viralize some of their messaging?
Yeah, and I also think that it comes from kind of the strength that they had in talk radio. They've turned their strength in talk radio into strength in podcasts, into strength in because the digital mediums are now evolving, right? I mean, obviously a podcast is part of a digital medium. Sure. Yes, you have, Pod Save America and its little crooked media empire. That's great. But take a look at the top podcasts in the United States, and you're going to see right-wing podcast, because they're just better at it. Yes, in part because they have a message that people want to hear, but also because they've really made it economically viable. I mean, we have in Canada, we have Rebel News. Ezra Levant has taken the same model that existed from InfoWars and has turned it into a financial vehicle to make him lots of money. InfoWars doesn't exist simply because they want to propagate really crazy right-wing ideas. They exist because they make money. They make money, and they turn that money, they turn their lunacy into money. And that's the ultimate goal for these right-wingers, and they are really good at it. They've been managing lists. They've been managing emails. I remember meeting, the Daily Caller folks, 15 years ago when it was starting up, and it seemed reasonable, right? And then, here we are now, and it's a nut right-wing rag because that's where the money is.
Corey finishes off.
And look, I'll say this. One of the fairy tales that liberals tell themselves at night is that the Republicans seem to do well here because their message is so simple. They're able to get it out because it's just such a simple message. And the left's message is more nuanced and more complicated, and the world's more nuanced and complicated. Well, get better at communicating. The reality is that is not an excuse, and you should be able to find a way that you can craft your message in such a way that it's like a bell being rung. You just hit your point and you move on. And to sit there and say this is just sort of baked in and this is just something Republicans are instinctively and innately good at is just defeatist talk. Get better at communicating.
Let's move it on to our final segment, overrated or underrated. So what we're going to do, guys, is I'm going to give you an item of the week, and you tell me if it's overrated or underrated based on the play that it's been getting and where you kind of think it sits in your mind. And let's talk about the first one, which is Trump's campaign says it's knocked on 1 million doors a week. Biden's knocks on 0. And so this door-knocking, ground game, traditional field organizing, self-reported, I should say, edge that Trump has, overrated, underrated? Corey, I'll go to you first.
Well, I think underrated only because of the moment that we're in here. We're in a pandemic. I don't want anybody showing up at my door, for Christ's sake. I mean, we're in a country where we have 1/100th of the cases that are in the United States right now. I don't want anyone knocking on my door to try to sell me on their political views. I can't even imagine that you're going to persuade a moderate voter by showing up and talking to them about politics on their front doorstep. I think that there's a chance it could backfire in some cases. So I think that's deeply underrated at this moment. That said, I do believe there's some value to those fundamentals. And outside of this moment, Biden's got to start thinking about how he's going to get to people, even if it's not physically at their doors.
Carter, what do you think about door knocking and Trump's door knocking edge that he has right now, that self door knocking edge? Overrated or underrated?
Well, I think that it's underrated in that, Trump is doing the regular campaign, and Biden has decided to forego much of the regular campaign and instead rely on advertising. I think that this could be, Corey's right. No one on the left wants anyone knocking on their door. But the voter identification process still needs to happen. And more importantly, you need to motivate those voters to get out. There's a whole new series of GOTV models that rely on door knocking, that rely on in-person activities. It used to be that you could just send a postcard and people would be more likely to vote. Now you got to knock on their door, take them by the hand and get them down to the polling station. With mail-in ballots and the post office as it is, finding out how to take someone by the hand, metaphorically, is going to be the new victory sauce here as this campaign unfolds.
Corey, just last night, the USPS, United States Postal Service, had a massive shakeup overnight where the Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, kind of a Trump ally, I should say, consolidated power, fired 23 executives. Democrats are calling for this as an inquiry to the Inspector General. The current state of the U.S. Postal Service, from the play that it's getting, is it overrated or underrated?
I think it's a big deal. We are going into an election where there is going to be more absentee voting and more voting by mail, and the USPS matters a great deal. They have the ability not just to determine whether that will be successful writ large, but successful on almost a block-by-block basis, right? Where are you putting your resources? Are they going to Florida? Are they going to communities in Florida that are more likely to vote Republican? Are they going to Broward County, or are they going all the way up into the Panhandle? This is the choice that the Postmaster General can make. And that might not have seemed like a big deal when everybody's going to vote in person, but it's a big deal. Think about how close some of these elections have been lately in Florida, in Ohio, in states like that. The Democrats desperately need to get a handle on this, because this situation feels like it is running out of control. And there's 100 different ways that you can screw with the postal system that will never leave a mark on the body, right? You just don't put that executive in place in time in that particular region of the country. You just make sure that that particular post office is getting the resources it needs and the others don't. You don't need to explain why. This is a real problem, and it could be a bigger problem. Like this is deeply alarming stuff.
Carter, the USPS's overnight shakeup and consolidation of power, overrated or underrated?
Oh, I think that it's a really big deal. It's underrated right now because people don't see how it's going to all unfold. First of all, I mean, he's trying. The Trump play and the Trump playbook on this is to try and mess with it and hope that no one notices. Here in Canada, when people went on CERB, which is our monthly income support for COVID related job loss, the money was put into our bank accounts via electronic transfer. The United States is still sending checks. And those checks aren't arriving, and they're not arriving on time because Postal Service has been disrupted. And if you're disrupting someone's Social Security check and that gets tied back to you, and that's what the Democrats are in the midst of doing, is tying it back to you, this could have real ramifications. Forget about voting by mail. This is going to be felt in the next 60 days, because imagine going and waiting 5 or 10 extra days to get your Social Security check. This is not going to be a good thing for Donald Trump. But if he continues down this path and does disrupt mail-in voting, it's not going to be a good thing for the United States of America.
No, he's just going to blame Amazon and Jeff Bezos, and he's going to say it's because of the bad deal the USPS has with them. I can already see how this is going to play out. I can already see where he's going to flail next, and you just can't let him do it. You got to pin him down now.
Carter, I'm going back to you for this one. Overrated or underrated? Biden's expecting a bump on his VP pick. Is that overrated or underrated from what you know and what you think?
That's overrated. I mean, I think first of all, the list of women that he's looking at are fantastic people. I mean, who's he going to pick where people are going to go, oh, I can't believe he picked her. They're a great list of people. And on top of that, it's not going to matter anyways. It almost never has mattered. The pick of vice president, when Hillary Clinton picked Tim Kaine, it wasn't like her numbers suddenly shot through the roof. It was like, oh, okay, now we've got somebody. And the same thing when Donald Trump picked Mike Pence. There was no big shakeup in the election campaign. There won't be this time either.
Corey, what do you think? The VP bump, overrated, underrated?
Well, in this case, I think that it might matter more than it does in other years, simply because there is such a news vacuum with Joe Biden hiding out in Delaware. He's in his basement, and as has already been noted, and there are so few clips of him out and about that the Trump campaign has resorted to doctoring them. It's maybe they would have anyways, but the point being, when there is less to talk about, this is going to fill the space, and people are going to dig pretty deeply into this candidate. And especially given, I think, Joe Biden's age, it's got the chance to be much more relevant than it does in other times. People may see this more as a president in waiting than in years past.
Corey, back to you on this one. Overrated or underrated Trump's edge on Facebook?
Trump's edge on Facebook is underrated. This matters a great deal. He's got quite a machine. The number of ads he's running is significant. The shadow campaign around it is significant, and unfortunately, you can already see that it's paying dividends just based on how some of these things have shared and some of the things that have gotten into the conversation.
Carter, overrated or underrated Trump's edge on Facebook?
Underrated. I mean, he's also got a separate set of rules. The rules that are written by Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg are written for others, and they're not written for Donald Trump and his team. That's going to cause ripples and real impact all the way down. Trump can be censured on Twitter all he wants. He's going to get upset about it and create a stink about it. But it's Facebook that matters, and Facebook's going to turn the election as it has in the past. And if Mark Zuckerberg's not going to step in on Pizzagate, he's not going to step in on whatever made up crap is created by the Republicans this time.
That is our first episode in the can. We will leave it there. That is You the People for this week. We can't wait to see you all next time.